report out of Cuba now on the north central coast. Patrick Ottman is there live for us. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Rick and Rube. Good evening. So right now we're in a bit of a pause. We are having some very intense winds and rain. Earlier, it really came out of nowhere after the whole day long. Just conditions were slowly worsening, but it hadn't rained at all. And all of a sudden, we just got absolutely blasted with very powerful winds and rain. Just shows how deadly this storm can be, how unexpected at times hurricanes can be. And now, as power has gone out where we are, this town of Caibarien, on the north central Cuban coast, there is something of quiet as people are waiting to see what else is to come. We expect in the hours and day to come, conditions will continue to worsen here. People have either evacuated or they are riding it out of their homes. At this point, if people want to leave, it's just too late.
Talk to us, Patrick, about how folks on the island have prepared for this storm. Of course, there are fewer resources there in Cuba and some limitations as far as what the government is able to provide service-wise. Is the island prepared for this storm?
They really seem so. I've covered a number of hurricanes here, and at a certain moment, the government clicks into high gear, and this is something they do quite well with the limited resources they have, and a lot of it is just strategically positioning the supplies they have, the resources they have. So as we were driving here from Havana yesterday, we could see that they were bringing resources into this area to have ready. So as soon as the storm passes, those resources will be brought in. They will clear trees. They will repair water lines. They will get the electricity on in a place like Caibarien back up and running, so that there's that rapid response that sometimes you don't see in other countries, in that sense of organization, because this is a country where 80% of the people, more or less, work for the government. The government here is obviously in all places, and they really do focus on trying to fix storm damage. Cubans, going way back, have a lot of experience with hurricanes because, of course, you live on an island. There's nowhere else to go. So everyone knows how dangerous these storms can be, what to do when a storm comes. But, of course, I don't think anyone has ever seen a storm quite like Irma.
Yeah, when you say that people were evacuating, where was it that they went? Where did they evacuate to, and how?
Absolutely. So what you do is you get more inland. You get away from the coast because there's going to be a lot of flooding here. There'll be storm surge. It's dangerous. So if you get a little bit more inland, you are somewhat safer. You would go and stay perhaps with your relatives' homes. There's a nearby school here that's been turned into a shelter. Some people go a lot farther, and if you went to, say, Havana or Santiago de Cuba, there'll still be some effects of the storm there, but it'll be much less than what we're feeling right now. We're really getting the full force of the storm, at least considering the distance that it is from Cuba, and that it's unlikely still, or at least it's not known if it will actually make landfall here. So you can do that, or there are people who are going to caves up in the mountains. People are going to old bomb shelters. So there are places you can go, and the government is providing as much as they can some transportation. Today we were seeing as people were piling in their most prized possessions into horse and buggies to go a few towns down where they expect to have much less of an impact. Certainly here, Caibarien, Cuba, is a place that's going to feel perhaps some of the greatest impact. People are expecting quite a powerful storm to come here in the hours and day ahead. So they're really preparing, if not for the worst, because the storm is expected to go by. They know that they'll get the most impact here before the storm goes into Florida, and of course has a much greater impact there than it's expected to have here in Cuba.
Patrick, I want to talk to you about building codes because, as you know, after Hurricane Andrew here in South Florida, new codes were put in place so that any new buildings that were put up were built more strongly and able to withstand these kinds of hurricane force winds. Both Rudabeh and I have spent time in Cuba. I've spent time with you in Cuba, and just my perception of the buildings there that I saw in Havana and Old Havana were that these don't look like they have been fortified in any way. Talk to us about how safe structures are on the island.
No, I was in Havana the last few days, and that was really a concern for me that I didn't see any plywood up over windows. Of course, This is a country that's very strapped for resources. It's still under U.S. economic sanctions. You can't import things without the government's permission, so you just don't see these kinds of supplies even on a good day. And Havana really is the worst case scenario because you have so many dilapidated buildings. You know, remember in Havana when it rains, forcefully, not a hurricane, but just a strong rain, you have buildings collapse, what Cubans call derrumbes. So it's very dangerous, even in a strong rain. If a major hurricane were to go into a population center like Havana or Santiago de Cuba, it could be catastrophic. So Cubans are certainly breathing a sigh of relief that this storm is not going to, we expect, have that kind of major impact on Havana that it could have on Miami and South Florida, is expected to have. But certainly along the coast here, it is going to have an impact. And the Cuban government this morning, the forecasters who work for the Cuban government said that it will have an impact on pretty much the entire island because it is such a big and powerful storm. But as long as it stays off the coast, Cuba, it appears, will miss the bullet. Still, it's going to take weeks, months, perhaps even longer for Cuba to recover from the damage that we're just beginning to experience here.
And of course, as we've been talking to our meteorologists, you never want to get that false sense of security because even at the very last minute, it can switch there. And I believe I just saw you on social media in a huge gust of wind. So stay safe out there. Patrick Ottman for us in Cuba. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Be careful out there.